Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for depreciation report requirements. My name is Wendy Wall. I'm the president of the Vancouver Island Strata Owners Association, and I am coming to you today. I'm joining you today from the Lekwungen-speaking territories of the First Nations in Esquimalt and Songhees. And I'd like to welcome Jason Roerick. And Jason, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm a lawyer. I live here in Victoria. I'm a sole practitioner. Strata law is my primary focus, 95% of what I do. I was called to the bar in 2001, started my career working in Vancouver as a civil litigator, moved in 2009 to Victoria to join the BC Public Service. Did a stint in policy and legislation, another stint in administrative adjudication, and then opened my own legal practice a few years back with the strata law focus. And I live in a strata complex, so I've seen the ins and outs of strata living, both from both sides of the lawyer's desk, let's say that. So, and I'm looking forward to talking about depreciation reports today.
Great. So thank you everyone for sending your questions in advance. Got a whole list for Jason today. I would like to encourage you though to visit Visoa's website where we have resources, including links to the full wording of the Strata Property Act and the regulations. And just note that the changes don't come into effect until July 1st, 2024. So if you go to the website for BC laws or you Google the Strata Property Act, you're not going to find the new wording there until after July 1st, 2024. So for now, Visoa on our website, we have what we call convenience copies where we've put the new wording in. So it's really easy for you to see what the law will be in a couple of weeks. So with that, Jason, I'm going to throw the first question at you. So as of July 2024, do all stratas have to obtain depreciation reports? And the questions we're getting are any stratas exempt?
There's sort of two things you need to study to get all the answers you need from depreciation for your depreciation report questions. You need section 94 of the Act, and then you need to go to the Strata Property Regulations, which are not passed by the legislature, but by cabinet. And there's a regulation that's just for the Strata Property Act. It's called the Strata Property Regulation. And if you go to Regulation 6.2 and beyond, you'll find the source of the answers to all the questions that you'll be asking today and that we'll be discussing, or most of them anyway. So so that said, now, if one goes to the new regulation, section 6.22, it says that section 94 sub 2 of the Act does not apply in relation to a strata corporation if and for so long as there are fewer than 5 strata lots in the strata plan. So if you have 5 lots or more, you have to get a depreciation report. If you have 4 or less, then you are exempt. Now, you still can get one, but you're not under a legal obligation to. And just a couple of things I'll throw in there. It doesn't matter if you're a bare land strata, you still need one if you have 5 lots or more.
One of the questions we're getting a lot of this, can we vote to waive or defer getting the depreciation reports?
Okay, and the answer is no. Now, this can be confusing at the moment, and we're recording this before July 1st, and that's because if you go onto the BC Laws website and you look at the current section 94, you're going to see all those waiver rights are still in the legislation. Okay, because they changed the law back in, I think, what, 2020, but it doesn't come into effect until July 1st. Okay, but as of July 1st, section 94 is going to be reworded, and all of those waiver rights are gone.
let's just talk about if we get our report soon, within the next year, specifically before July 1st, 2025. Or sorry, if we get it after that, sorry, it's an important date, July 1st, 2025. If we get it after that, who's qualified to provide our report?
So you should always start with the statute. Section 94(1) of the Strata Property Act says that these things have to be done by a qualified person. And then it says, go see the regulations to find out who a qualified person is. So under the current regulation, it says, well, a qualified person is someone who has the knowledge and expertise to understand the individual component, scope, and complexity of the Strata Corporation's common property, et cetera, et cetera. So you've always had to have someone who basically has the knowledge and expertise to to understand your components and the complexity of your common property and so forth. And the Strata Corporation is responsible to repair and maintain them. So that's there again. But then what they've done that's new, and this is the game changer, is they've said that in addition to having that knowledge and expertise, the person now has to have one of 6 professional designations or licensing designations, might be the right word for it. And you'll see that, as I said, in regulation section 6.2 subsection 0.1 paragraph B. And there are 6 that are listed. So from now on, the person who does the depreciation report must be a professional engineer or a registered architect, or a registered applied science technologist, or a designated accredited appraiser, or a certified reserve planner, or a professional quantity surveyor. So it has to be one of those.
The one nice thing I like about this is the clarity. For years people have said, well, what does that sentence qualified person mean? And it required some interpretation. Now we've got a very clear list, and it's actually very similar to other provinces in Canada that have this very specific list of professions. So that was the question of who can do it after July 1st, 2025. What happens if we're getting our depreciation report now, or in the next few months, before July 1st of next year? Who can still do our report then?
So currently, it's a person who has the knowledge and expertise to understand the individual components, scope, and complexity of the Strata Corporation's common property, common assets, and those parts of the strata lot or limited property, or both, that the Strata Corporation is responsible to maintain and repair.
It's kind of like a transition period. A lot of stratas already have engaged a professional to do their report, and they're on a queue and they're waiting for 3 months or 6 months for their author to get to them and start the report. So this is kind of like a window of time for those people to finish, if that makes sense.
They've got to have that credential. If you're obtaining the report after July 1st, 2025, if you are, the person who writes it for you must have one of those credentials.
Yeah. So here's kind of a specific one, but I think it illustrates a point. It says our most recent depreciation report was obtained in 2022. When is our next report due? And we've got a couple similar questions coming after this.
The first question you ask is, when was our last depreciation report obtained? Was it obtained before December 31st, 2020? Or was it obtained after December 31st, 2020? Then the applicable subsection in the regulation would be section 6.21 subsection 2, which says, subject to subsections 3 to 5, a Strata Corporation must obtain a new depreciation report at least once every 5 years.
Right.
So you have 5 years from the date of your last depreciation report. So if December 1st, 2022 was the date of your last depreciation report, then you're going to have to get your next one by December 1st, 2027.
Right. Okay, so then let's just move quickly into the next one, because you've just beautifully explained that there's a really important date there of December 31st, 2020. So we've got a few similar questions about this, and let's frame this as some stratas have never obtained a report, or their last report is so old that it's before that December 2020.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
so what are the deadlines for these people who just haven't had one after December 2020?
And the answer is there that it depends on where you live. So I'm just going to read this. It says a strata corporation established before July 1st, 2024. So like just set aside if you're like brand new. We'll come to that. Okay, that has not obtained a depreciation report since December 31st, 2020 must obtain a depreciation report. Okay, if you're located wholly or partially within what's called a specified area, you must get your next depreciation report by July 1st, 2026. So
Yeah.
let's simplify. We've never done one in our life. When do we have to have it by? Well, if you live in Metro Vancouver or, or CRD or Fraser Valley, you got to get your first one by July 1st, 2026. Okay, well, what if we, had one in the spring of 2020? Same answer.
Yeah, same answer. And then, of course, if you're not in the CRD, Fraser Valley, Metro Van, if you're on like a little island like the Gulf Islands, even though you're in CRD, but because you're on an island, or if you're in any other part of BC, then they've got an extra year, right?
That's right. July 1st, 2027. Now, what about islands? If you live on an island that is only accessible by air or boat, then you are not in a specified area and you're subject to the 2027 deadline rather than the 2026 deadline.
Okay, so what if you're buying into a brand new strata? It doesn't exist by July 1st, 2024. So I'm buying in a new strata in the next few years, maybe 25, maybe it's going to be ready in 2025 or 2026. What's the deadline for that strata to get their first report?
Okay, so to get your answer for that, you're still in regulation section 6.21, but now you have to look at subsections 4 to 5. Okay, and subsection 4 says that if you are established on or after July 1st, 2024, but before July 1st, 2027, then you've got to get your first depreciation report no later than 2 years after the date of your first annual general meeting. So established is the date that your strata plan is deposited on the land title at the land title office. So if you want to know when was my strata established, you just look at the strata plan, which you can get from the land title office, or your property manager should have it, and that'll give you the date of establishment. Anyway, so once that first annual general meeting has happened, the clock is ticking and you have to do it within 2 years. And then after July 1st, 2027, that clock, that window is shorter. It goes down to 18 months.
So we have several questions about the content of the report. Can you tell us what part of the regulations has that great big long list
Yeah.
of, the physical inventory, the summary repairs, and what we call financial forecasting? We don't need you to read it because it's way too long.
Yeah, long. Yeah, so put everyone to sleep. Yeah, so that hasn't changed. And when the new reg, actually comes out, it'll be consolidated. But if you go to section 6.2, and you'll see in subsections 1 through 3, it's all laid out there. And yeah, as Wendy said, you have to have a physical component inventory, repair, maintenance work, financial forecasting sections, some information. And the one thing that has been added to the requirements for the report is that there has to be an executive summary now in the depreciation report. That's the one thing that's new.
So after our strata has a report, do we have to give a copy to every owner?
Okay, so first of all, as a general principle, remember that the report belongs to the owners, not to the strata council. And under section 35 sub 2 n.1, you're required to keep a copy of the depreciation report. And incidentally, you have to keep them forever. So you're not under a legal obligation to provide all the owners with a copy of it. It might be a big thing with lots of color photos and be rather expensive. But you are required under section 36(1) to make copies available. Well, to make the report available to people on request and to provide copies. And you can charge up to 25 cents for a page. But you know, like I counsel here against, or sort of being cheapskates with your legal rights there, and sort of like creating the impression that you're hoarding this. You want the owners to be able to see this thing and buy into it, because you need their votes at all the meetings where they got to open their purses to pay for all the stuff in it, right? So like I would recommend, and this isn't legal, like this isn't legal obligation, but I would recommend like keep a clean copy for posterity. Get one for the council that they can mark up, at least one, and at least one copy that you can sign out to individual owners. And in this day of everything being scannable and PDF copies available, like if you can put a copy on your website or have an electronic copy that you can email out,
Yeah,
so much the better.
that's our best practice too from Bizoa, is just email a copy to everybody. So this is kind of a sister question. Is there any obligation for the strata to actually act on the author's recommendations? Is a strata obligated to recommend one of those three funding models? Like, do they have to stick to it?
Yeah, so good question. Think of the depreciation report as a budgeting and planning tool, not a mandatory to-do list. Its purpose is to help you make informed decisions and give you options. It doesn't fetter or bind the discretion of the Strata Council. If you want to know, like, well, what are our obligations as a council in terms of maintenance and repair, your legal obligations flow from section 72, which says that the Strata Corporation must maintain and repair the common property and the common assets. And parts of strata property that are their responsibility, and that's going to be interpreted by the courts through the lens of section 31, which says that you have a duty of care to be reasonably prudent. I'm paraphrasing, and to act in good faith, and so as long as you are reasonable in your management and your planning of capital improvements, then you're not bound by the depreciation report. Now, reasonable means, listening to what the experts have to say and considering them and making, decisions. But like, let's take a really practical example. Let's say you have a depreciation report that says, okay, well, in 2 years from now, you're going to replace the window, and in 4 years from now, you're going to repave your parking lot. But it just so happens you've got a big dump truck coming in and a big waste disposal truck and lifting your garbage bins and it's just ruined your parking lot. Well, there's nothing to say that you can't flip those around. Your windows are doing fine, so okay, we're going to like repave next year and put the windows off a couple of years, for example. That would be completely appropriate.
And just to add to that, I think you're going to find that in one depreciation report, it might say your windows have 10 years left. And when you go to do your next report and the author sees the condition of the windows, they might say, oh, they're not faring as well as I thought. And they might actually change that timeline themselves.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
it's a living document in a way that it can change. Yeah, so that's a great answer. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, no, but like do bear in mind that like this is something that savvy purchasers are going to want to see. And and this goes into like philosophy, like how big is our contingency reserve fund going to be, how aggressive do we want to be on on capital repairs and whatnot. But if there's big disconnects between your depreciation report and the work you've actually done, a savvy purchaser is going to pick up on that, and that could influence how much they're willing to offer on a purchase and whatnot, right? Buyers will want to see that you're taking good care of your your assets.
So we have one more question. Thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. What is the process to hire someone to write our depreciation report?
Yeah, well, there's nothing in the act about how you do it. But there's standard procurement practices that help you ensure you're getting good value for your money, and you want to follow that. You want to scope out what you want like if you've got a really complicated strata with, elevators and pools and, and whatnot, then you might need that professional engineer. If it's a really simple little townhouse complex, maybe you don't need someone with the heavy credentials. So you think about that, you put a scope, you invite bids, put a competitive bidding process in place. You look at sample reports, you talk to people who've been previous customers, and then, you make a decision. You sign a contract that if it isn't a price quote, at least it's there's some protections in there that's not going to run way out of your budget, and then you keep an open line of communication, and keep expectations clear, and that's just good procurement, right? Depreciation report is no different than any other procurement in that respect.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Jason. I'm just going to put a slide up here with your contact information. Hope everyone can see that. Thank you so much for spending your time with us this morning. You covered a great deal of information. If everyone wants to check out Jason's website, it's there.
Yeah.
And as I said, we have information on Bizoa's website. Thank you, everyone, for spending your Saturday morning with us and attending this webinar about depreciation reports. Thank you, Jason.
All right. My pleasure.